Hey everybody, I'm Zach.
And I'm Jesse.
And you're watching In Depth
on Now You Know.
All right, so this is an episode that if you have small children or you do not want to see something that is upsetting, you should not watch, because we're talking about the death of someone that happened last week. In Tempe, Arizona last week, a woman was struck and killed while she was crossing the street by an Uber semi-autonomously driven car. According to the police, the woman was crossing North Mill Street in Tempe, Arizona at night with a bicycle crossing not on the crosswalk. CEO of Uber, Dara Khosrowshahi, said on Twitter that the company is working with law enforcement to determine the cause of the accident. Now, this happened last week when we were recording Tesla Time News. We didn't have time to get into all the details.
Right.
But now we've had a week, and we've been able to kind of dive in deeper to see what happened.
Right. So this is no longer breaking news, but more and more information has been coming out. We've actually gotten a really good set of data that we can take a look at and dive really deep into this and try and understand how this happened and what it means.
Investigator in charge Jennifer Morrison has been called in with 3 other investigators from the NTSB who will be determining what happened, because there's lots of footage and electronic sensors on board this car. So they are hopefully going to get to the bottom of exactly what happened. But what we know now is that the car was traveling on North Mill Street. It's a 45 mile an hour zone. And I want to show you some Google Map footage that we have here so you can get a better understanding of what this all looks like. You start on a bridge, which is a 35 mile an hour zone, and then you go under the overpass and it becomes a 45 mile an hour zone. The Uber car was reportedly going 40 miles an hour, and the Uber car has a safety driver in the driver's seat. And why is that?
That is because obviously nobody has figured out full autonomous driving cars yet. So having a safety driver in the driver's seat ready to take over at a moment's notice if there's any kind of problem is super important. You need to have someone ready to save the day.
Now, if we look at the footage that was released by Uber from the dash cam, this is what we see, and it's disturbing footage.
So it really looks like the pedestrian just sort of comes right out of the shadows. There's no chance that anyone could stop a car in that amount of time.
That's what I first thought when I first saw it. And in fact, it reminded me of when you were a kid and we were driving on a country road and a deer popped out in front of me and we hit the deer. We're going about 35 miles an hour. And I thought there's no way I could have avoided that, when I replayed it in my mind, because the deer came out of nowhere. And that's what I thought of here.
Right. There's some reasons why this footage might not be exactly what a human eye would pick up. And the first thing would be the headlights. The headlights appear to extend, using the lines on the road, we can say they extend about 50 feet in front of the car.
Yeah, so you're seeing a still image here of when we first can see the pedestrian. And if we know some things about lines on roads, we know that the line should be 10 feet long, and we know the spacing between the lines should be 30 feet. So if that's true, the pedestrian should be about 50 or 60 feet from the front of the car.
So we know that the Volvo XC90 has a rated headlight distance from the IIHS of 250 feet.
Right.
So we should be able to see pretty darn far ahead of us if we're a normal human with normal eyesight.
And yet we only are able to see about 50 or 60 feet in front of us.
So that kind of is a little strange. I mean, it looks like we're in a horror movie or something.
Right.
Other people have taken footage from their cell phones driving this exact same route at night.
Yeah, let's see that now.
You'll notice that it is noticeably brighter. I mean, there were, splotches of light in the sky that you weren't exactly sure what they were. Those were street lights, almost very close to the actual incident. This was a well-lit road. It doesn't look like that at all. It looks like you were in the middle of nowhere.
Right. And I think that's because the dash cam was set to, daylight settings and wasn't adjusting like the cell phone that's being used to shoot this other footage is constantly adjusting like your eye does.
Right. So conceivably, to me, the safety driver would have been able to pick out the pedestrian crossing had they been paying attention. Now, let's dive deep into this safety driver.
Yeah, so Uber has footage of the safety driver during this whole incident, so let's watch that footage. So now, as you can see here, Jesse and I have gone through this footage kind of frame by frame, and we've seen that the safety driver is looking down for 4 seconds at her lap, and what we think is texting on a cell phone.
Right.
Then she looks up for 2 seconds,
and then back down for 6, and then looks up a split second before the accident.
Right. Now, what I think is important here is that the whole reason you hire a safety driver is to be alert at all times. This is not a level 5 autonomy car. Level 5 autonomy would mean that the car doesn't need a driver at all. Uber has already admitted that they've only been able to get an average of about 13 miles out of their cars before a human has to intervene. That in comparison to Waymo, which claims that they can go 5,600 miles before a human has to intervene on average. So if Uber's cars can only drive 13 miles before a human has to take over the wheel or hit the brakes, that to me tells me that these cars are no more than level 2 autonomy,
Right.
no matter what you want to call them.
It's exactly like when we picked up Sparky for the first time. You'd have to take over every once in a while, especially on most roads.
Right. So what I think has happened is the safety driver has gotten complacent and thinks, I don't really need to pay attention because most of the time everything's fine, and so I can have fun texting. Why Uber would allow this, I don't know, because just watching this footage for 10 seconds, I think you can all agree she's not doing, even if you don't agree that she's texting, I think we can all agree looking down at your lap is not what you're supposed to be doing.
Right. And keep in mind that this is a paid safety driver. This is her job. This isn't, she's not going above and beyond having to stop the car. That's her whole job. That's why she's able to text the whole time. She's not writing code or analyzing any sort of data. She is simply there to make sure that the car doesn't hit anything.
Right.
And unlike, say, the Joshua Brown accident, where an owner of a Tesla was in autopilot and got killed due to an edge case, this is a paid safety driver. I mean, to me, this accident shouldn't have occurred.
No, there's so many things that could have happened that would have kept it from happening. First of all, if it was daylight, maybe this wouldn't have happened because you would have been able to see even so much further ahead.
Right. And I want to say a lot of people will argue that the person should not have been crossing the road there. While true that you're not supposed to do that.
That's going to happen.
That's going to happen. And we sort of, as human drivers, have to deal with that kind of thing all the time.
Exactly.
And that means that autonomous vehicles are also going to have to deal with that all the time.
Right. So this car has LiDAR. This car has radar. This car has cameras.
Right.
I am very, very surprised that none of those systems seem to have reacted at all. There didn't even appear to be any braking whatsoever.
Right. No braking, no swerving. Yeah, there's no indication that the car even registered that she was in front of the vehicle.
I would have thought that the AEB, the automatic emergency braking system, alone could have maybe saved this person, because that's a radar system that would have sent out a signal, bounced back and said, oops, there's something there, let's apply the brakes. And even if the car didn't come to a complete halt, maybe slowing it down even somewhat could have saved this pedestrian.
Right. This sort of calls into question for me what the radar and the LiDAR were doing. Now, for a lot of people, it's going to call into question all autonomy, all autonomous cars, and all companies that claim to be working on autonomous cars. They're going to say these systems shouldn't be tested in the public. We shouldn't even try autonomous cars if they're going to kill people. And I think that that's sort of a panicked reaction to it. I think that absolutely we need to better develop some standards here, because obviously if you have a safety driver who's texting, there's no point in having a safety driver.
Exactly.
You're better off having no one at all in the driver's seat.
And Uber's system, if it can only go 13 miles before a human interacts, then I don't even think we should be calling this an autonomous car. It's a human-driven car that has some safety features that help the driver.
Right.
So the media just calls it an autonomous car. We are trying to get autonomous cars better, so we need to do this. We need to gather that data and make these systems better.
Right.
But it's not an autonomous car, people. Waymo, their CEO, John Krafkic, has come out at the National Automobile Association in Las Vegas, and they said, quote, "We are very confident that our car could have handled that situation. We know that for a lot of different reasons. It's what we have designed the system to do in situations just like that."
Right. And of course you can claim that is true without having to prove it.
Well, but I will say their data showing that they can go 5,600 miles before a human interacts, and we're talking about driving on real roads.
Yeah.
It kind of does prove it. Their system's way better than Uber's system.
Now, does this mean that we should halt all autonomous driving tests? Does that mean that we shouldn't even attempt to do it because of this death? To me, I would say no. I think that, we knew that this was going to happen. This was a perfect storm of situations where, clearly the hardware or the software was not apt to the task.
Right.
The safety driver was not paying attention.
Right.
You had someone who was crossing the road illegally, and it was at night. So all of these things can contribute into an accident like this.
But let's look at this. We know that there were 5,997 pedestrians killed in the U.S. in 2016. That's an average of over 16 people a day.
Right.
If autonomous driving cars can be even a fraction safer than that, then it is worth doing. Because picture this. If autonomous driving cars could be proven to be 10% safer, then we would save 600 lives a year.
Right. Just on pedestrian accidents. Keep in mind that there are over 1.3 million traffic deaths per year, and that
In the world.
Any percentage that we could shave off of that number means that those people are still among us.
The level 2 autonomy in Teslas already has been proven. We have data. We have millions of miles of data to prove that it's 45% safer than cars without that. That's, I guess, the hardest part humans have, is that we see a death and we go, oh, stop that. Don't allow that anymore. Yes, there was a death, but that same day there were 16 other deaths on average on American roads caused by just regular drivers.
Right, and we're not trying to belittle this. Obviously, this is a huge tragedy and something that really should not have happened. But we do want to bring it into perspective and say, is it the end of the world? Is it the end of autonomous driving cars? I don't think so. I think that the benefits are certainly going to outweigh the risks, and we just have to work on developing it in the future.
I just want to stress that when your friends at work say, all that talk of autonomous driving cars, I guess this proves you're wrong. This wasn't an autonomous driving car. It was a car with driver assist features. That's all it was. It wasn't even done that well.
Right.
So we're comparing the wrong things here. We do need to gather data, and that's why we have safety drivers. I'm just shocked that Uber would allow this driver to work for them, because if you're Uber, there are going to be accidents.
Right.
When those accidents happen, what kind of driver do you want to be interviewed on the news? Do you want a driver who's been texting, or a driver who was doing their job perfectly?
Right. I mean, let's face it, if the dash cam footage were accurate and there wasn't enough time to react, but she did react, she slammed on the brakes the second, you could see the pitch of the car.
Right,
it would be a different conversation. It would not be, oh my God, this lady was just completely without any braking, without any...
She could have swerved to the left, she could have braked, and both those actions might have kept an accident from occurring at all.
Right. Anyway, we wanted to bring this to you. We wanted to go a little bit deeper in depth, talking about, why this happened. I mean, and another reason why this could have happened is just the road itself. It goes from a 35 to a 45 over a bridge. There's even less lighting in this now 45 mile an hour zone.
So I want to just take you down this road for a second.
Mm-hmm.
You go over a very well lit bridge, but there's a sidewalk on the right, and nothing changes.
And a bike lane.
And a bike lane. Now, nothing changes when you go under the overpass. You still have the bike lane, you still have the sidewalk, yet things got darker, and yet the speed limit went up by 10 miles per hour. So the autonomous driving car here might have been speeding up, probably did, from 35 going up to 45. I think what's partly to blame here is that you shouldn't have a speed limit that's going up to 45 miles an hour when none of the conditions have changed for the better. They've actually gotten worse. The lighting has gotten worse. There's a curve coming up. And why should you allow pedestrians on the right and bike lanes on the right to be exposed to faster cars at that point? I don't understand. I mean, I'm constantly in town meetings in our own town talking about just these kinds of things. Where are you allowed to speed up the speed limits? Where are you not? And whenever pedestrians are involved, you always try to keep the speeds down to reaction levels, which is around 30 miles an hour. We have bike lane right on the right. Why would you increase the speed to 45 miles an hour?
Right.
I want to go to when cars first came out. When the first automobiles were coming out, you were supposed to have a light man, a person with a pole in front of the car, walk in front of the car to light the way because they were considered so dangerous. We've obviously scaled back those concerns. And maybe we've scaled them back too far because obviously we're killing over 1 million people a year on roads in the world because cars are so damn convenient. We don't want the same thing to happen with autonomous cars, and in fact, they're not, because autonomous cars will eliminate all the problems that humans have. Texting, which we just saw here,
right?
Falling asleep, drinking, paying attention to your friends and phone conversations, and then just being a new driver, bad eyesight, bad reaction times.
Just being a human.
Right.
I mean, you are not you were not made to drive a car.
Right.
You only have two eyes. You look directly in front of yourself. You have peripheral vision, but it's not great peripheral vision. You can't look behind yourself unless you're looking in a mirror. When you're looking in a mirror, you're not looking in front of yourself.
Right. So we've been increasing the speeds. We've been making it seem like cars are safer by having airbags and all these other safety things. So everyone's driving faster, and then we're adding all these distractions to the car. That's why we need autonomous cars, because there will be no distractions. They're much better at driving. It's just we haven't done this before. We haven't programmed cars to do it. We need to start doing it, and we need to practice it. But we need safety drivers who are doing their job.
Right. So thank you so much for watching this episode of In Depth. We hope that you enjoyed it. We hope that you learned a thing or two. Sorry it was such a dark topic, but in the future when we have full autonomous driving cars, I think that's going to be a brighter future. So thank you so much for watching.
Now you know.